largely based on the economy, the hardship in the economy, the growth downturn, the issues of electricity disruption, doomsaw issues, issues of exchange rate skyrocketing, high inflation, high interest rate, and all of that. And then that was usually or mostly from the opposition parties, and we also heard from the government also putting up the fact that, well, despite all these difficulties, we have invested heavily in infrastructure and all of that. And so the Ghanaians were to weigh these two key issues to vote on. At the end of the day, the major political party opponent won with quite a resounding victory, with a resounding mandate, which means that people at the time were more concerned about the state of the economy. The issues of joblessness was on the mouth of many people, the issues of electricity, unreliability, and all of that. So these were the key issues that people actually voted on. And most of these key issues, if you go through the manifesto of the MPP, promises were made around many of these issues, how they were going to address many of them. And true to that, on the 2nd March 2017, when the budget was read, we could all attest to the fact that most of the things that have been promised prior to the elections were captured in the budget. We know the issues of the IPEP, the that is what Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, one district, one factory, one village, one dam issues, Zongo development fund, and a host of other issues were all captured in the budget. But the issue that we're seeking to find is whether these issues that were covered in the budget and which government appears to be prioritizing, whether it's the same thing that the people expect government to do, particularly in the first year of its governance. Are there gaps? Are they in line, in consonance with what government is seeking to do, so that government can get some kind of feedback in prioritizing, in going forward, particularly in feeding into the review budget and all of that, so that policies can be shaped in a way that meets people's expectations. So that is the main rationale for conducting this research. So we went about and to design a structured questionnaire. And the questionnaire is actually based on it's a mobile-based survey type, which we call the random digit dialing technology. So here, the difference with the normal kind of survey is that this one is purely mobile-based. So the questionnaires were pre-coded in a mobile-based platform, and it was sent or dialed to individuals who have phones. So once you have a phone, then of course you are a potential respondent. And so that was based, this one or this particular technology is often much more, these days is coming up, is more prevalent in recent times because it, beyond the cost of reaching out to people, it also helps you to save time in this data collection process. It often eliminates issues of interviewers' biasness because you will not be there to influence the respondents and all of that. And it also helps you to reach out to greater majority of the people in a very shortest possible time, okay? And the other good side of it is that the structured questionnaires were actually done in English, but it was also translated into 4 key languages, into Twi, Ga, Ewe, and Dagomba, and Hausa, which then means that you understand exactly what you are being asked, and so you can actually make informed choice. So at the end of it all, we were able to reach out to 6,641. And this was based on a very clear stratification method. The stratification largely based on the fact that the individual should have a phone, mobile phone, that is the first point. And then we also make sure that we create the necessary balance between that is gender balanced, and then locality as well, that is the locality of resident, whether you live in a rural or urban area, and then the educational status, as well as the age. So we make sure that all these categories of groupings are well represented in our data collection process. So we got 1641, and then it also, the domain was based on regional-based domain, and we make sure that it is very well represented because we use what we call probability proportional to the population size. So the bigger your region, the more representation that you have in the sample. And we also targeted individuals aged 15 years and above. So quality control measures were put in place. That really is one of the key features of the mobile-based survey, because it has inbuilt mechanism that actually do very good quality control. For example, you cannot have one person, answering two, because your number will show up that you have repeated responses, and that will automatically be deleted from it. It helps you to do real-time checking and analysis. While the data collection is going on, you can do real-time analysis, you can view the data and all of that. So it is really very useful. Okay, so what is the demographics of the respondents that we collected? So at the end, we have gender, and the distribution is female, actually comes to the 48.8%, and then we have the 58.2% and 41.8% as gender distribution. Locality of resident, that is urban, which is 54.7%, and then rural 45%, which is quite reflective of the population and housing census, the 2010, that's the latest population and housing census report. And then age distribution also shows the same characteristics of our economy or of our population, and we have the pyramid-based age distribution. So 60 years and above is just 3.5, and then the 15 to 25 has the largest base of 40.7% in that order. In regard to regional distribution or regional variation, as I mentioned, it is the representation is based on the size of each of the region, and so it clearly shows, you can see that Ashanti leads, and then followed by Greater Accra, and the least is Upper West region with 2.4%. And then we also do the stratification for education, and this is also very much reflective of the national distribution, except that the only bias is that this one, you have to have a mobile phone, so that has a big influence on the results. So you see tertiary is about 17.6%, that is educational distribution, and senior high school 26.2%, and then GHS primary 16.8%, and then no education, which is also quite significant. So everyone is represented in this analysis. Okay, so our first question actually wanted to find out what the people's priorities are. If they are to advise government, what are the key things that they will ask government to concentrate on? And it came out quite clearly that for many people, job creation is their priority. Getting work to do came up the top. It is about, little more than a quarter of the respondents actually think that government should spend much more time creating jobs. And so that really has implication on the MPP's own manifesto and the budget, which says sowing for growth and job creation. And so that here, people appears to be going along with that kind of viewpoint. And so the expectations on government to create jobs for the people is really very high in this regard. Of course, also focusing on macroeconomic stability also came up quite significantly, at about 25.39%. I think that government should think first about stabilizing the macroeconomic environment, which I think they have a point, because no matter your policies, if you don't have a stable macroeconomic environment, there's no way you can have a thriving policy. Your policies will not see the day of light. So it's important in that respect. And then, surprisingly, building infrastructure was quite low. I mean, the least among all the, what people expect. And that also appears to reflect on what the people chose at the end, during the elections, because it was really a contest between infrastructure and job creation. So this is also quite reflective of that kind of issues. When we decompose the data into locality, urban and rural, the differences are not that too striking, except that you see that the urban areas their concern is more on job creation than the rural area. The rural, I think we see some kind of slight increase in government should concentrate on promoting agriculture as a priority. And so that is also to be expected, because the majority of the labor force in the rural areas are into agriculture. So job creation is important in the urban area, much more than the rural area, who think that, of course, it's not mutually exclusive, because when you concentrate on agriculture, obviously you will be creating a job as well. And then we also look at it in terms of education. And in education, too, we see some interesting pattern where those in a higher, to say that the higher your educational level, the higher your desire for job, So those within the senior high school and tertiary seem to concentrate more on, or seem to be telling government to create more jobs. Tertiary has about 41.2%, and that order. However, interestingly, those in the lower ladder of education, no education and primary, their focus is on two main priorities, which is ensuring economic stability and also creating a friendly business environment for businesses to thrive. What we can say about this result is perhaps those in the lower ladder of education appear to be engaged in more trading, so the business environment is much more important to them. Creating business, macroeconomic stability where inflation is stable, where the exchange rate is stable, is more important to them, because they do more of the trading. And so it wasn't too surprising that we have that coming out quite big. Then we go to education. Education, the issues are whether government should build more schools, that is ensuring fiscal accessibility, easy access, or government should concentrate on quality of education. Then the third one is about affordability. And here the question was whether government should focus on the free senior high school. So which of the three is more important to the people? One is about fiscal accessibility, two is about the quality of education, and three is about the free senior high school. Yes, the result is quite expected, that we have the majority of the people, though not the overwhelming majority, 51.9% think that free government should make sure that the free senior high school education is a priority for the year. But you could see that that is just about half of the population. And then we also have quite significant number, about 34.3%, think that government should concentrate rather on the quality of education, which is very important. When we look at the rural-urban distribution, it's not too distinct or striking, except to say that those in the urban areas seem to prefer more quality than the free, because we have the quality shooting up to 36.5%, and then the rural being about 31.9%. What is actually striking is when we look at it based on educational variations or education. And for education, we can see that the higher the educational attainment, the more the people prefer, or the respondents prefer, quality education to free senior high school education. So you can see those in the red one. The red one is improved quality, and then the green one is free senior high school. And you see that from no education, primary school, GHS, to tertiary, the red one increases like that, which means that the higher one's level of education, the more the person thinks that quality education is probably better. And the reverse is the case in that respect. But in regional distribution, it's also quite revealing that when we look at it at the regional level, we also found out that except for the three northern regions and Volta region, all the other regions actually think that government should focus on free senior high school education. But for Upper East, Upper West, and to a large extent Volta region, their priority is that government should focus on quality education. Plausible reason may be that because those in the north perhaps already enjoy some kind of free senior high school education, and they are more concerned about the quality of education in the north, where sometimes there are no chalks, sometimes they have to walk long distances, and the fiscal, the burden and all of that are issues that really concern many of them. And also the fact that sometimes even the money that government have to transfer, particularly in regard to school feeding and capitation and all of that, it delays, as we recently heard that it has delayed in the north for quite some time. So to them, the emphasis should be on quality other than free. On health, the same issues on health. We looked at whether the people think that government should concentrate on building more hospitals, creating fiscal accessibility, improve quality. Government should look at quality of education, healthcare delivery, or affordability issue. In this case, the NHIS, whether the concentration of government should see to revising or reviewing and improving on the NHIS so that it can actually be more effective in helping people access healthcare. This one was quite overwhelming, that the greater majority of the people believe that government should concentrate more in improving the NHIS system. So we have about 57% of the respondents actually saying that they want to see the NHIS improved. And that, for me, is something that government should take seriously. In localities, rural, urban, the same thing appears, and the only difference is that rural people seem to concentrate more on affordability, that is the NHIS, than the urban. Of course, in the urban areas, many people have not subscribed, so that perhaps is what is playing out. And so with these issues, which is largely on the economy, then we go to the issues that borders on bread and butter, or the standard of living for that matter, critical issues that government should concentrate on. And here the options were the environment, issues of sanitation and all of that, improve water for households, or government should end the popular phrase doomsor, that is making sure that electricity is reliable, electricity supply is reliable, and then also issues of costs of these utilities, that government should concentrate on reducing cost of these utilities, cost of rising cost of electricity and water and all of that. The government should concentrate on that rather. And it came up clearly that people are more concerned about costs, the costs of these items. Environment didn't seem to be too concerned. The people don't seem to concern themselves too much, but the cost of these utilities, electricity in particular, that people think that is too high, and so as government said in its manifesto, it should find ways of reducing these costs of accessing these utilities. There's not much striking difference in terms of urban and rural. And so I'm going to pause here and allow my colleague to come in to take you through the governance and accountability and peaceful issues, and so that I'll be here taking your questions if you have any with what I've presented. Thank you very much.
I am pleased to present the issues as they pertain to governance in the survey that the Institute conducted. And the first issue is about government's priority area in the fight against corruption. Government's priority area in the fight against corruption. Per our findings, you have about 43% of the respondents saying that government should concentrate on investigating and punishing corruption. Government should concentrate on investigating and punishing corruption, followed by about 35.4% of our respondents saying that government should appoint an independent public prosecutor. Then 21.6% say government should enforce corruption laws and sanctions. My own interpretation to this, I mean, if you look at it, the Adom FM sponsored Fabewosu demonstration attests to that. People went on the street, and what they were saying was that government should investigate and punish corrupt, officials. And so I am not surprised that this is stopping, even though the government seem upbeat and very much interested in the creation of or appointment of the office of an independent public prosecutor. The views of the people sampled suggest that they prefer that this is done first, investigating, government investigate and punishes, corrupt officials, maybe before thinking about appointing the independent public prosecutor, and then also ensuring that corruption laws are enforced. Generally, it shows that Ghanaians are tired of corruption and they want something to be done by it. But if you do a little cross-tabulation or analysis in terms of locality, it appears that, again, within the urban centers, 40.9% of the respondents feel that government should investigate and punish corrupt officials. And still at the urban centers, 22% feel that corruption laws should be implemented. And in the urban center, again, 37.1% compared to 33.5% in the rural centers feel that government should appoint an independent public prosecutor. In my view, this crosstab doesn't say much, but the general feeling is that corruption should be investigated and corrupt officials should be punished. My interpretation, again, is that if you speak to some people who know about these issues, they've argued that why can't we empower the Attorney General to do what is right? It seems that we are accepting the fact that the Attorney General is unable to do what it is expected to do. I mean, if you have a president appointing an Attorney General, it becomes difficult for the Attorney General to prosecute his own party functionaries and all that. And so oftentimes you have they focusing their attention on former government appointees. But is that the right thing? If that's not the right thing, why can't we empower the AG to do that? And secondly, why do we think that appointing an independent prosecutor will be all of a sudden be that's independent enough to do what we require him or her to do, given that in our part of the world, heads of the independence of heads of independent institutions have always been doubted. Heads of institutions that are supposed to be independent, oftentimes we see them in partisan colors and all that. So in my view, that's why some people feel that let's investigate and punish corrupt officials. But that's not to say that Ghanaians are not interested in the new initiative of having an independent public prosecutor's office set up. The next issue is the creation of administrative regions. We are told that some regions are supposed to be reorganized, and in the process of that, some 4 regions would be affected, and in the process of reorganizing them, you have 4 more regions being created. And the affected regions are going to be the northern region, the Bronga-Afro region, the western region, and the Volta region. And if you look at what we have here, it seems that there is a strong support for it. If you look at the table, 54.9, close to 50, or almost 55% of the respondents strongly agree, and those who strongly disagree are only 17.8%. Those who somewhat agree are 16.1%, and those who somewhat disagree are 11.2%. So if you want to add those who strongly agree with those who somewhat agree, if you want to put them together, then you see that it seems that quite a number, majority of Ghanaians are in support of this particular proposal. But my question is, do they know what this proposal entails? Do they know the processes and all that? We didn't find out. And my own view as a political scientist is that new regimes that benefits or enjoys a lot of goodwill get support for virtually everything that they propose to do. And so I look at the figures as we find again here, and you see that it seems that areas that the government does not enjoy much popularity didn't give strong support to this proposal. So you look at the northern region and then also look at the Volta region. Whereas in Ashanti region, it was 60.3%. If you come to Volta region, it was 46.6%. If you go to Northern Region, it is 44.0%. But if you go to the other areas that the government has a lot of support, you have a lot of people strongly agreeing to this particular proposal. Now, if you cross-tab this by the educational background of the respondents, you would know that those who seem to know what the proposal entails are quite approaching it with some amount of trepidation. Look at the educational background. Those who have no education at all, 54.2% fully support the proposal. And the number, if you compare to those who have tertiary education, it's 40.1%. So you compare. So I did that little comparison, and I'm thinking that those who really know what it entails are quite cautious in offering their full support to it, compared to those who have no education at all. Priority area of governance. Now, if you look at the priority area of governance, you have quite a sizable 37.1% of the respondents saying that government should fight crime and promote personal safety. Government should fight crime and promote personal safety, compared to 19.4% of the respondents who believe that government should strengthen the judiciary, and then 19.5% respondents who believe that government should strengthen and promote peace and security, and 15.8% also saying government should deepen decentralization and grassroots participation. Worked from morning till somewhere around 4:45. I was tired, and I said, well, let me see what's going on in Ghana. So I went to my Joy Online, and then I saw this student that I taught, who was murdered, the soldier. Somebody that, even though I taught both he himself and the wife, they were all in my class. They were just dating, they were just friends around that time. And he has been murdered. And those who know him, I have a personal knowledge about him. He's a very calm, very responsible, very polite, and very much of a gentleman. But he was just murdered like that. And I keep asking myself, if such a handsome and a very gentle person, a very calm, at one point in time, I had the cause to ask him, how are you a soldier? Because you are too polite, you are too caring, you are too gentle. And he said, well, modern day defense is not about being quote unquote an abongo boy. You can be decent and still perform your duty. And my heart bleeds. If such a person can just be murdered like that, then we are all not safe. Because it just requires somebody to call you a thief, and then people will just jump on you and then lynch you. Before they realize that you are a chief, or you are a university professor, or you are a minister, it's too late. And so that is why I believe most Ghanaians are saying, in terms of priority areas, in terms of government doing something about governance, government should focus more in fighting crime and also improving personal safety. We pride ourselves that we can get up, as on the streets of Accra, you can walk, up and down at any time, go in, come back to bed at any time without anything happening to you. But given what happened, I am scared. And in fighting crime and promoting personal safety, government should ensure, the security agencies should ensure that in their work to deal with these things, they learn to arrest the right people so that you don't have nolle prosequi being filed. Learn to arrest the right people, the offenders. And I was telling somebody that I may not be surprised, even though we have video evidence, that if you don't take care, the police will come and tell you that, well, those who have been arrested in the murder of Captain Mahama were not the right people, and so let them be freed. But I think we can't go on this tangent in perpetuity. So security agencies, my call to you, that in trying to help in fighting crime, you should be able to ensure that you don't just go on a swoop arresting everybody, knowing that at the end of the day, you don't have to create the impression, letting everybody know that you are working, knowing that, well, the people you have arrested, when they are subjected to street proof, you can't say that they are the right people or they are the actual people who perpetrated the crime. And so in fighting crime, it is important that we learn to arrest the right people, those who actually perpetrated the crime, so that you wouldn't go to court and then they will tell you that free them because there is no evidence. Policy recommendation. First of all, government should create an enabling environment for more jobs to be created and also accelerate the implementation of its policy. One district, one factory, and planting for food and for job, as so many people are yearning for job. In the previous administration's time, there was an association called Unemployed Graduate Association. That association still exists now, and so many people are looking for job, and the government has, in my view, proactive policy initiatives that, when properly implemented, will translate into tangible jobs for our teeming young population. And so government should be committed to creating this enabling environment for more jobs to be created. And then again, we say that government should tread cautiously, even though there seems to be much support for the regional reorganization bit. Government should tread cautiously and hasten slowly in an attempt to create new administrative regions, because you have some people, I believe, said they liked it, but I'm not sure they really thought through it. And more importantly, there are people within the huge chunk of respondents in areas that are supposed to be affected, but that the government is not too popular there, who are saying that, well, we are not sure, and their support they give to it was not that overwhelming. And given that we have a history of low voter turnout, especially in local elections, I mean, the proper word is plebiscite, but the framers of the Constitution use referendum. The plebiscite that would be held in the areas that are supposed to be affected by the reorganization, I'm told 50% must show up, must turn up. On the average, local elections, voter turnout has been around 30 to 32%. So then government must do well to whip up enthusiasm in ensuring that you have 50% showing up. And when 50% show up, 80% must say yes. And don't forget that political parties are also allowed to go and campaign against the proposal within the area of the plebiscite. And so if much consultation is not done, then we may end up just wasting money. I'm aware that the minister in charge and his team are, even before a commission of inquiry is set up to go and find out the merit of this proposal, the minister in charge is also going about meeting people. It's my prayer that there will be much broader consultation and civic education before to ensure that you have a groundswell support, particularly among those to be affected, so that the whole exercise, if we really want it, it doesn't become futile. Again, government should expedite action on the appointment of the independent public prosecutor to deal with corrupt officials. Even though our study, per the study, we saw that so many people are interested in ensuring that corrupt officials are dealt with. If the government believes that the right way to go in kickstarting its effort aimed at fighting corruption is quickly to have an independent public prosecutor, so be it. But let the office be set up quickly, and let us ensure that we adequately resource and empower it, and let it not be interested only in officials in the previous regimes, but everybody who has been involved in any corrupt deals, so that we would ensure that the battle against corruption is not fought and lost. Again, the rising cost of water and electricity is still a burden to the populace, and we urge the government to constitute a body that would investigate and review and improve our billing system. So many people are complaining about the billing system, and they say they don't use the utilities, and yet they pay huge bills. And recently we've seen so many people demonstrating on television and all that. Government must also review and strengthen the National Health Insurance Scheme to deal with all bottlenecks, corrupt practices, and inefficiencies that have stalled the smooth running of the scheme. And this government prides itself that it initiated the scheme. And so it is their baby, and we urge the government to ensure that the challenges that continue to saddle the scheme are tackled more frontally. In the area of education, government should not compromise quality while putting measures in place to promote free education, particularly at the senior high level. Yes, free SHS is good, but we must be sure that we do not just create SHS and without resourcing them, without ensuring that the quality standards are high. And last but not the least, government should strengthen the security agencies in their efforts to fight crime and promote public safety. And I'm saying that as the security agency do this, we should ensure that the right people are arrested so that we reduce it's becoming recurrent. People are arrested and then they are sent to court. They say, well, we don't have evidence, and so they are just freed. And this may, if we don't take time, heighten impunity, and it would let people take the law into their own hands. I think it's not something we want to encourage within our body politic. So in conclusion, economic priorities for government, we want people, or Ghanaians want the government to create jobs. Education, government must implement its free SHS policy, but without sacrificing quality. Health, government must improve the National Health Insurance Scheme by dealing with all the challenges and bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and corrupt practices associated with it. On corruption, government must investigate and punish all corrupt officials and appoint an independent public prosecutor to oversee this process. Government should also hasten slowly in the creation of new administrative regions and must endeavor to ensure broader consultation to get and civic education to get the needed public buy-in and ownership. Governance, again, government should endeavor to fight corruption and promote personal safety. I thank you very much for your attention.
Kindly identify yourself, and then let us hear your question or your observation.
Thank you very much. Me, Ukanja III. My question is to Dr. Osei Asibi. I noticed in your earlier statistics that you had fewer people with the age of 60 and above. And I'm wondering if there's any particular reason why there are fewer of them involved in your statistics.
I have two comments. The first is in respect of the use of the mobile phone. In reading the providers' assessments of those who use phones, a very large number, I cannot remember how many, own more than one phone. What was the probability of a single person answering twice because they had more than one phone number? My second observation is about the way the data, some of it has been presented. Initially, you gave us some areas that you looked at, for example, creation of jobs, infrastructure, the economy. And then in the sample, we noted that we had rural, urban, we had it by age, by education, by gender. I did not see any cross-tabulation by gender. It would have been interesting to have that, especially in regard to the first few presentations that covered the job creation, the economic issues, and the infrastructure. Because data from elsewhere talks about the value that women bring to governance, and that they focus on certain areas rather than others. So this would have been interesting to see what the situation in this survey was. Thank you very much.
I think the lawyer there just got my first question about gender. I think it was very important, was missing. And I was wondering also why you added 15 years, because it's been in voting. You start from 18, and why did you use 15 years? And also the mobile phone penetration in the country, we know is quite high. So I suspect your sample size is quite small. I think you would want to look at it and check the spread. Thank you. And also, maybe before I sit down, the first one was my one question. Second question would be, I was not surprised, I'm surprised that in health, you asked earlier about NHIS. Maybe if you had done the research today, environment issues would have featured, that would have impacted health. So I was wondering why environmental issues were so low, in the first presentation. I think that, that might, because of the way the questions were posed, it skewed that. I appreciate NHIS to be improved, but I think that you have to prevent it before we get into hospitals. Thank you.
My first question has to do with the sample size. Looking at the level of mobile phone usage, I was thinking that they could get more people. The other one has to do with the selection criteria to be able to disseminate the questionnaires. How were you able to target them to gender-specific region? How did you do that? And then the last one is on the recommendation that was made concerning security. Exactly are we proposing in strengthening the security institutions? Are we looking at issues of tenure of the high-profile security officials like the IGP, for example, to be able to do things without them having issues of looking at the conflicting with the political elite?
I'll pick the first one from me. Why do we have fewer people in the 60 and above age? Okay, I think that was your question. Yes. I think that's quite representative of the way the population structure of our country is. It's more of a pyramid form. So the top is often small. It's just about the 6.5 that is the population census. So that figure is quite in line. Although this is 3.5, in the national level it's about 6.5. So that might be the reason. Of course, it's still representative of the age population. We have the base is very youthful. Our population structure is very youthful. About 40% of the population made up of 15 to 25 as age. With the issue of quality control, how do we ensure that one person does not use different phones to actually respond? Like I said, this technology is quite vintage. It has inbuilt mechanism. Can use voice detection to detect that you are called once, and so it has a way of ensuring quality control. And if it has any link, it has taken away the first digit. Many people put, so their first grade digit will be different, but the remaining numbers will be the same. They have a way of checking that. I concede with your issue of gender that at least, gender is a cross-cutting issue. We should have focus, but we're thinking more of the brevity of that presentation, other than maybe covering all dimensions of society groupings. So in the full report, you will see analysis of gender, how gender issues play out in this. So we will take that into consideration. Someone asked about why are we starting from 15, because 15 is not a voting age. I think what informed that is we're looking at the labor force participation. At the age that you can work. So I mean, once you are adult, the economy, obviously will concern you. So 15, that is the age, the labor force participation age, is age that you can actually work. Right? So that actually informed us. The sample size, yes, sample size was small compared to the population, but of course it's still representative. The issue with, in fact, one drawback with the mobile-based survey is that many people do not answer calls to unknown numbers. So you can throw in the calls. As soon as the person doesn't know you, either the person will not pick because he doesn't know your number, or when you call and he listens to the voice and is not familiar with it, immediately shuts the phone. So based on that, and also based on the cleaning of data and making sure that there are no multiple, repeated numbers, we came up with this number. Of course, we can always expand that. But what we did was we also signed quotas to each of the region, and the base quota was 35 for each region, and then on that base, we actually used the other stratification to make sure that we got a representation. I think we can do more. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jampo?
Well, thank you. I think, yes, I admit that we didn't have people commenting on Galamsey, and issues about sanitation didn't feature much, in our finding. But about the timing we conducted this survey, I think it was about February, March, or something. So around that time, sanitation wasn't an issue, and indeed, environment wasn't an issue. And indeed, when we saw the findings, we wanted to find a way of doing another study to be to test whether environment will feature, but unfortunately, we weren't able to do so. And so it's because of the timing. What exactly are we doing? Are we proposing to strengthen security? These are findings from Ghanaians. They are saying we should improve security and fight crime. And so I want all of us to have our take on it. How do we improve security? If you think that the office of the IGP shouldn't be one of the areas that the president must exercise his appointment powers, I mean, we can all discuss it. But then I want this one discussed by all of us. What we will do, particularly given what has happened, like that, somebody being murdered like that. I mean, what can we do to bring about security? Part of what you will say would also capture and have them as part of our policy brief.
Okay, following on that last point, it will be interesting to find out your view about people's perception about the inefficiency of the police service. A lot of people lack confidence in our police service. And when you talk to people who indulge in mob justice, for example, they will tell you that there's no point reporting to the police because it will get you nowhere. It will be interesting to find out what your view on that is.
Mine is more of maybe a suggestion. It's on the age bracket, and it's because you asked the question on the creation of new administrative regions. Looking at what happened a month ago, where some people in the Volta region saying they wanted to secede, yes. So if you had, for that particular question, for the creation of administrative regions, I suggest that probably your next survey should include people above the age of 60. maybe they understood that when that was taking place, when the British chocolate were joining Ghana, so that when these other regions are created, there won't be a time where they would say that they're not developing at the pace in which they want to develop, and so they want to succeed or do something of that nature. And on the suggestion of the security forces, I think the IEA has suggested that before, and I'd want to add my voice to it, that we can make the security, to build confidence in the security force, you can make the IGP's tenure secured. You give him a secure tenure, make it apolitical, because as far as he's appointed and he has maybe goes with the administration that appointed him or her, it makes the other people working under him want to listen to him and do everything he says to please the administration, because we've always been saying that if the NPP is in power, the police service are more pro-NPP and would want to arrest people who are not NPP and all that. So if we can make the tenure secured, making the administrative, the IGPA political, it would ensure, it will build enough confidence in the police service.
My question is on the policy recommendation. There was an open one that the government should create an enabling environment for job creation. And I want to find out whether just the IPEP will be enough for the job creation, or there are indeed some specific factors that the government needs to consider. For example, like the reduction in taxes as spelled out in the 2017 budget, and also to add up to the creation of the new administrative regions. I think that for subsequent studies, or maybe in addition to this one, there could be a follow-up question like, why are they saying that new districts should be created, new regions should be created, and why are they not in support of the creation of new districts? Thank you.
I have two questions related to methodology. The critical issues that government should look at. I'll be interested in finding out how we arrived at these things. Was it expert opinion that was used to come out with a list and then respondents selected out of the list? Or was this an open-ended question where the responses were then clustered for us to then arrive at what the critical issues are? Trying to assess whether it's your opinion that influenced the final selection of these critical issues. And then secondly, under corruption, which is our area of interest, we had three things. 43% saying investigate and punish, 35.4% saying appoint an independent public prosecutor, and 21.6% saying enforce corruption laws. It's a bit difficult to separate these options. So I was wondering how we came up with them, because you see, appointing an independent public prosecutor is all about investigating and punishing. And again, enforcing corruption laws is again about the punishment. So I'm just wondering how we came up with these options that had to be, as it were, ranked or voted on to arrive at these percentages.
What we sought to do was just to tell the government what the expectations of the people are. And so I am sure that once it was a promise that they will do all they can to provide jobs for the teeming unemployed people in Ghana, they know what to do. So it is not, we just mentioned one of the proposal of the government, that one village, one factory, and one district, one factory, and all that. I mean, these are some of the interventions that we believe, if the government is committed to implementing, I mean, they will create jobs. And I'm sure they have other interventions, and so we count on them, and Ghanaians are expecting them to deliver on the promise. Now, why are people supporting the creation of administrative regions, and why are people also opposing it? I don't know, but it seems that one of the things that were said in the lead up to the election was that you want to do regional reorganization so you can reach out to the people in terms of development and all that. There is actually a detailed study and analysis that I'm conducting. The findings, will bring it here again, and then we'll look thoroughly into that particular proposal. So I don't want to drink the soup whilst the food is on the fire. So you hold on. I mean, we would see whether truly regional reorganization brings about development or not. We would interrogate that. Why are others opposing it? That one too, I don't know, maybe for political reasons.
I think that if we go to the referendum or the plebiscite, as you rightly say, and the citizens vote against it, it's not a waste of money. It's not a waste of money at all. It does not mean that the government must always win. Because Chapter 1 of our own Constitution even says that sovereignty resides in the people of Ghana. So what the people will say must always be respected. And when government brings an action, it does not mean the people want it. So in governance, democracy, and elections, the right of the people must be respected, whether by government or individual. So it can never be waste of money. But it's an avenue where the government may find out whether indeed the people want more regions or not. And secondly, I think that in asking questions about regions and its creation, maybe next time you tie in also whether the citizenry has been given the opportunity to elect their own district chief executives on purely partisan basis by the Electoral Commission. I think the other choices of the president picking up 3 people and giving it to the people is useless and baseless. I mean, if you are doing democracy, you must do it deep. After all, other African countries, Kenya, Uganda, Ivory Coast, Liberia, are all electing directly in partisan lines their own DCs. So their democracy at the grassroots is better than what we are doing here. We are doing national level democracy. But democracy must go to the grassroots. I think that if we do that, assemblymen cannot go and take a soldier because the people will know which kind of assemblyman they will vote for based on the competition of ideas that will involve elections. Thank you very much.
The whole thing has been centered on the creation of jobs. I realized from your presentation, you gave us 33% of job creation. People are demanding for job creation. What kind of jobs are they talking about? I was expecting you to break down the types of jobs that they are requesting, because I know definitely the government alone cannot create jobs. So I suggest we go further to ask, what kind of job do you expect from the government or from the private sector? We should be able to come out from it. I'm happy when you quoted that 15% are interested in jobs from the agri sector. Yeah, likewise, you tell me they need from mines, they need from water resource, then I'll be very happy that your presentation is very complete.
Very much, Commissioner Short. I'm from the University of Ghana, and thanks for your presentations as usual, Prof. and Doc. Mine is actually more just a comment in relation to the issue of what we call the mob justice and other things related to it. I think sometime in early March, I had an article in the Daily Graphic on indiscipline on our roads, and I was hoping that you would tackle that, because the cost of doing business in Ghana cannot be dissociated from just the cost of indiscipline on our roads. And I've just driven from Kolebu to this place. I've had to, as everyone does, have motorbikes driving against me and navigate my way across. The police crossing, the police standing there. I had a chance of just going to Gumbo on Saturday, and a 1-lane road became 3 lanes. And the cost to human lives, to doing business, and to everything is huge. And what I did say, and what I'm throwing back to you, is that for anybody trying to invest in a country, indiscipline is something which is a serious disincentive. And our roads is a clear sign of things breaking down. And our appeal, hopefully through IEA and other partners, is that if we can't tackle these obvious and clear signs, then we are in for big trouble.
Well, I think what the people are looking for is more jobs, create more jobs. So really, it doesn't matter what kind of job. It's about, let's have jobs to do. So the clamoring It's for government to make sure that jobs are available. But of course, in Ghana, if you look at the job, the unemployment rate is one of the lowest, about 6%, less than 6%, right? It means that almost everybody is doing something. But the issue really is what kind of job that the person is doing. And so when people, all of these people are still crying for more job, then what it means is that they are looking for a decent job, much more productive job that can earn them a living. And so my thinking is that government should create that environment that will ensure that much more decent jobs are created for the people. Thank you.
If government does not do its work well in consulting and in ensuring that there is a critical mass of people supporting the proposal, if government does not consult the stakeholders and you clearly know that you are going to fail and you go out of your way to fail, it's a waste of money. And so what I was asking the government to do is to ensure that it does its homework well, and I commended Honorable Dampoutri and his team. And I know that even before the commission of inquiry is put in place to go and investigate as to whether the people really want regional reorganization, they are out there meeting stakeholders. If they do so and they do it well, then it becomes easier for them. Otherwise, if you don't do your work well, you go and fail. And if we all know that you didn't do what you were supposed to do and you went out, then you should be charged for having caused financial loss to the state. Again, whether citizens should be directly involved in determining who must head them at the various MMDC level. I mean, I think the the Constitutional Review Commission's report settled that. The overwhelming view was that people should be allowed to elect their DCEs on partisan basis. I don't understand why people will decide and then a few people that call themselves a government will write a white paper to counteract what the people have decided. And so the bogus arrangement that you spoke about, that president is allowed to select from some 5 people, or some 5 people are brought to the president, it is thrown down to 3, and then he appoints, amounts to race centralization within our quest to bring about decentralization. It is bogus. And so, Mr. McMenu, I think your government must have to revisit the whole constitutional review process. We don't know the states now. If you don't revisit it, you can also still be charged for causing financial loss to the state, because it's a process that has been initiated and it's gotten to a place. Now it's your turn. So either you make sure it is implemented to its logical conclusion, or you tell us something. Otherwise, we'll charge you. Thank you.
All right. We would like to thank Dr. Jose Asibe as well as Professor Jampo for the presentations. I'd like to thank you also for your input, your questions, and your comments. I think 3 issues came out very clearly. The need for government to create more jobs and to create an enabling environment. The other one was the need to fight crime and to promote personal safety, which is related to the point made about lawlessness. Indeed, the lawlessness in our society has reached unacceptable points. Lawlessness on the road, mob justice, and unaccountability, when these crimes are committed. And talking about corruption, which is another major issue in our national discourse, there appears to be impunity and lack of accountability. Every week you hear of a new corruption scandal. $1 million kickback, inflation of contracts to the tune of 40 million, boards of institutions participating in corrupt activities. It's too much. And I think there's the need for the law enforcement agencies to take a firm stand and to address the issue of corruption. Now, I don't think that we should wait for the independent public prosecutor. We have an Attorney General, and we have a Director of Public Prosecutions. These two officials should be seen to be tackling the issues of corruption before the appointment of an independent prosecutor. And I don't know that the appointment of an independent public prosecutor is going to be the ultimate solution to the problem of corruption. People are dying to see some action taken against corrupt officials. And the figures that are being mentioned are just astronomical. So that's something that really we should be focusing attention on. This whole issue of mob justice, it's mind-boggling. I just sometimes wonder who are the people who engage in mob justice, and what is the mentality or the psyche of those who engage in this kind of activity. And is the police doing enough to arrest and prosecute people who engage in mob justice? Because it's been happening, lynching, it's been happening so often in recent times. I think that if there's going to be deterrent, the police should be seen to taking concrete action by investigating thoroughly and arresting the perpetrators and making sure that they face the full rigors of the law. So there are so many issues which I think are crying for attention. And you and I have a responsibility to raise our voices and to put pressure on government and law enforcement agencies to do what is necessary, to make sure that there's a reduction in the incidence of crime, lawlessness, and also the incidence of corruption, which I think is going beyond acceptable limits. On that note, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming, and let's all stay strong and do whatever we can in our small corner to improve the governance of this country. Thank you very much.